I realized something was wrong when the house stopped feeling empty, even though I was completely alone. I'd come to my grandmother's place to clear out her personal belongings after she passed. No one else wanted to deal with it. They said it would be easier if I handled it quietly, quickly, without turning it into something emotional. The house sat at the edge of town, unchanged. Same pale siding, same narrow driveway. Porch light flickered when I unlocked the door, like it hesitated to recognize me. Inside, the air was stale but familiar. Lavender cleaner, old paper. A faint dusty sweetness I couldn't place. Every clock in the house was stopped at different times. I assumed the batteries had just died over the years. I told myself to stay focused. Sort, box, leave. That plan unraveled the moment I stepped into the living room. The dolls were everywhere. Not scattered, not piled. Arranged. They filled shelves, chairs, the couch. Dozens of them, all facing inward toward the center of the room. Porcelain faces, glass eyes, stitched smiles that never quite looked finished. Some wore dresses, yellowed with age. Others were naked plastic, limbs stiff and shiny under the dim light. I knew my grandmother owned dolls. Everyone did. I just didn't remember them being positioned. I stood there longer than I meant to, convincing myself this was memory playing tricks on me. Grief does that. It edits the past to make the present harder to understand. I carried a box from the kitchen into the hallway. When I came back, one of the dolls was no longer sitting upright. It hadn't fallen. It was turned. Its head angled slightly toward the hallway, as if it had been watching me leave. I picked it up. Porcelain felt colder than the room should allow. No cracks, no damage. I placed it back exactly where it had been. I didn't think much of it at the time. The bedrooms made it worse. In my grandmother's room, the bed was neatly made. The curtains were half drawn. On the nightstand sat a single handmade doll, cloth body, button eyes, red thread mouth stitched a little too wide. I felt an immediate, irrational urge not to touch it. I ignored that feeling and put it in a box. As I stepped back into the hallway, my stomach dropped. The living room dolls were closer now. Not all of them. Just enough to notice. A porcelain woman sat on a chair that had been empty before. A small plastic doll stood upright at the base of the stairs. I checked the doors. Still locked. Windows shut. I told myself stress was filling in gaps that didn't exist. I carried another box outside. Took a moment to breathe. Cold air helped. Reality felt firmer out there. When I returned, the hallway was lined with dolls. They weren't blocking my path. They weren't touching. They were facing inward, forming a narrow corridor that led straight toward my grandmother's bedroom. I said her name out loud. It sounded wrong, like the house didn't recognize it anymore. I tried taking pictures. My phone refused to focus. Every image came out blurred around the edges, like the dolls weren't fully anchored in the frame. I sent one to my sister anyway. She replied almost immediately. Why are you sending me pictures of an empty hallway? I stared at my screen. No dolls. I looked up. They were still there. I started packing faster, careless now. I didn't care what I took or left. I just wanted out. The dolls appeared in places I was sure I'd already checked. On counters, chairs, perched on the edge of the bathtub like they'd always belonged there. They never moved when I looked directly at them, only when I turned away. I called my sister, then my uncle, then anyone who would answer. I tried to explain, but every sentence sounded absurd the moment it left my mouth. They told me grief does strange things. They told me to step outside and calm down. I tried. The front door wouldn't open. The lock worked. The handle turned. The door stayed closed, unmoving, like something heavy was pressed against it from the other side. Behind me, porcelain scraped softly against wood. I didn't turn around. I backed away, murmuring apologies I didn't fully understand. That's when I noticed the folded paper on the nightstand. My grandmother's handwriting. Careful. Precise. They aren't meant to be observed, it read. They follow attention. I felt sick. I told them I understood, that I wouldn't watch, that I wouldn't take anything else, that I would leave everything exactly as it was. The pressure against the door vanished. I walked out slowly, carefully, never once looking back. The house was never cleared. The realtor quit after one visit. Neighbors say the lights come on at night, but no one ever answers the door. Sometimes, though, I see small figures reflected in windows, in mirrors, standing just behind me. No one believes me. That's fine. They don't move when you're looking. They only follow when you forget they're there.